Thursday, June 12th, 2014 was a bad day for Dr. Anatoly Romanov. As a medical doctor, he had been the headmaster of the orphanage in Antoshka, Kramatorsk, Ukraine. Now, I don't know if you know much about Kramatorsk, Ukraine, but if you do, you would know that it is one of the hot spots of Russian and Ukrainian tension, and it has been for years. The story goes like this. Dr. Romanov, wearing his white medical jacket, seated in his rectangular white office, was seated peacefully working on stuff for the day when he heard commotion outside the door. When he hears commotion outside the door, he notices that several men abruptly kick the door open. They're dressed all in black, military attire, and they come in and they let him know that they are taking his orphanage. So if you hear somebody say that they are taking your orphanage, you would assume that it's going to be something bad. It's going to be something gnarly, hard, and difficult. And indeed it was. There were 168 children in the orphanage that day. There are not to speak of Dr. Romanov and his medical staff and the nurses who were running the orphanage, filled with many high-needs children, including HIV, children with hepatitis C, children with many severe physical, mental, and emotional handicaps. So the men come in and they take the children and they move them to the top floor of the orphanage. When they move them to the top floor of the orphanage, one of the things that they had done was rules of war and engagement dictate that you cannot bomb an orphanage, a school, or a church. So by moving the children to the top floor of the orphanage, they knew that when Ukrainian airstrikes would come overhead to bomb the orphanage, that they could say, "There's children inside, please don't bomb us." Like cowards, they hid behind the children. Days came and went, and Dr. Romanov was reminded that this is, in fact, an act of war. We are not afraid of ending lives. A couple of nurses came in to aid. They took medical sheets, white large sheets, and they took toys. They walked out into the yard behind the backs of these soldiers and in an act of great courage wrote SOS, children inside. They laid the sheets down on the pavement outside and they went. Those same nurses smuggled 34 children to safety. They took their forearms, maybe the left forearm, and they wrote their name and their date of birth. They smuggled them out under the cover of darkness. They were later intercepted by several of the quote-unquote hostiles. They weren't Russian, they were hostiles. Wink, wink. So they go out and they're doing their work and they're intercepted, and then all of a sudden there's a 3-day standoff on the road. Russian media outlets cried that they were being held up from helping these poor orphan children in a humanitarian effort to rescue them and bring them back from that horrible, awful Ukraine. Ukrainian media said that our children are being kidnapped by Russian separatists, and back and forth they argue while the children sat in the heat of an ambulance and the crying tears of many nurses. Much humanitarian aid was given and much negotiation happened. 34 of the children were freed. One of them, her name was Raisa Cheripovska. Her American name is Raya Grace Littleton. She is my daughter, and she is here today. I met Raya on a Tuesday, and on that Tuesday, it was the second floor of a hospital in Kharkiv, Ukraine. And so we go into Kharkiv, Ukraine, and we go to the second floor of the hospital. And inside the hospital, it's a very yellow room, very, very yellow room with cracked walls in the corners. And we meet Raya, and we have our romantic moment of meeting this little girl for the first time. And I had a little Elsa doll that I wanted to give to this girl and help her feel loved and show her that I'm her papa and I'm here to love you. And when we met her, and she was very shy and very withdrawn. It was the only day in her life she's been shy and withdrawn, but she was shy and withdrawn. In the corner of the room, after the commotion of meeting Raya, I had noticed something. There was a crib, and it was shaped in the L, fastened to the wall. It was cast iron, white bars. Inside the crib was a child, head shaved, gray gown, gray sheets, clearly mentally, physically handicapped and delayed, unable to speak. My wife was talking with Raya and our facilitator, whose name was Tatiana. Tatiana was a great woman, by the way. And I walk up to the crib and I look inside and I see this child and I get a smile and I give a smile and I think to myself, there's a gift shop downstairs and I want to go and I want to get something for this child. And so I say to Tatiana, to the nurse and to the medical doctor, hey, can I go downstairs and buy this boy a toy? Very embarrassed, Tatiana motions me over and she says, Trevor, we must talk, eh? Which is come here. So she takes me to the corner of the room and she says, I don't know how to tell you this, but this is a girl. I said, this is a girl? And she said, this is a girl. We shave her head for hygiene purposes. We keep her here. It is strictly hygienic. We cannot help her anymore. And I said, well, what is her name? I mean, every child needs to have the dignity of having a name. I don't know her name. I asked the nurse. I get a shoulder shrug. The doctor says they'll check back with me, but they never did. The next day we returned to the hospital and I wanted to bring something for this little girl. And so I had a teddy bear ready, but she was gone. I don't know her name. I never will, this side of heaven. But I know that moment broke my heart. After being in the hospital, we were able to return to Raya's orphanage and we spent time with her there. We spent time with children in the HIV wing of the orphanage, which was something that I never want to see children that lonely again, because I am very certain the threshold for hell lies seconds within a Ukrainian orphanage. We walked inside and I saw 25, 30 children clamoring for attention, chasing after my wife, talking to us in Russian. This was the mama and papa. Come here, mama, papa. They wanted to play with us. They couldn't. The directors shooed them away, literally like dogs. Past the donkeys in the yard, past the wild dogs in the yard, past the heaping piles of burning rubble. Everywhere, everything. It was awful. We concluded court, and we flew home, and we arrived back in Ohio, Marion, Ohio, by the way. Yeah, go Bucks. I mean, it's difficult coming in after a Michigan guy, but with Jesus, all things are possible, right? So we walk in, and we arrive home very late on Saturday night. We see our biological children. I go to church the next morning. I'm shaking. I can't focus. I had a friend of mine come out of town to preach for me. Monday comes by. In my spirit, just everything in my conscience is stirred. By Tuesday, I still have the email. I sent an email to my professor and I said, listen, I've been working on this doctorate, change and conflict management, and all the challenges that come with it, within nonprofits, churches, everything else. I want to change all of the work I've done in the last several years on this doctorate degree. I want to change everything I've done. I want to focus more on international adoption. So there's a problem in our world today and we need someone to fix it. And I believe the church is equipped to mobilize our members to help this issue. He said, that's fine, but realize you're starting from scratch. I said, I know. So I threw away all the work that I had done and I began work on a dissertation, a new dissertation on international adoption. So here's what I found. There are 100,000+ children in America who are adopted every year. Now this includes internationally adopted children. It includes children in foster care. It includes a step parent adopting someone else. It's upwards of about 130,000, 140,000 children in the United States of America are adopted every year. There are 400,000 children in foster care every year. That's about the population of downtown Atlanta. There are 153 million orphans around the world today. The percentage of international adoptions has decreased by 77% since 2004. In 2004, there were in excess of 22,000 children who were adopted. This past year, it was 4,731. Now, some of that's because of government corruption, some of it's a lot of politics and just a lot of other issues, the rising costs of adoption and everything there. But what I know is this. I discovered something in the process of my work. It's not about adoption. It's about family. It's about what we can do to change the life of a child. And it's about a greater word, a hyphenated word, orphan care. Within our own borders, outside of our own borders, we have a situation. We have a family problem. Adoption is interesting. It always has been an interesting piece of our cultures throughout the years. Be it adoption in ancient Egypt, and we find records of children just being given guardianship to other families. And we see this in the Bible with Moses, a Hebrew boy, internationally being adopted by an Egyptian family. We see this later in the New Testament when the Apostle Paul leaves his family in Tarsus and goes all the way to Jerusalem with another parent-type figure in Gamaliel. We see this throughout world history with various emperors of Rome. Caesar being one of them, being adopted by a family of women, but they wanted a son, so they bring in even one of their own. And over the years, over and over and over again, we see this. Every culture has practiced orphan care. Now, orphan care is an interesting concept because with the orphan, what we see is that sometimes it's, hey, I'll help you. My family will help you. But like Harry Potter, we'll put you underneath like the closet door here, and we're going to keep you with the little bed, and we're going to tuck you away, far away from everything. But we'll at least give you food, and we'll at least give you a bed, and we'll at least give you clothes. But you keep your family name. I want my own. It's how adoption is handled in parts of England. It's how adoption is handled in certain parts of Western Europe. It's how adoption is handled by the Arabic world. The Christian community, somewhere along the line, says, the Apostle Paul, who was a very big fan of adoption, says that we are adopted heirs of Christ. That we are joint heirs with Jesus. That we are belonging to something that's greater. That when we profess our faith, we are being adopted into the family of God with the Lord our God Almighty being our adoptive Father. Which brings with it the blessing, but brings with it for you and I a new name. And with that new name comes many things, but above all else comes hope. You see, the problem and the remedy isn't only adoption. Adoption is the best solution. The greatest solution is family. Whether it's hosting an orphan through organizations like Project 143, whether it's adopting, whether it's saying, here's somebody I know who's adopting and I want to help them fundraise. I want to help them rally a cause for this child. So we began our adoption process in 2014. It was November and there was a girl from Haiti who we loved very much. She was a young girl, about 18 months. She'd been orphaned to the ministry we were supporting in Haiti. And we knew after we had tried that adoption was probably going to be difficult, so we supported her from afar. Her name was Estania. She's a beautiful girl. I got to hold her one summer trip. It was wonderful. November 2014, we received a phone call that she had passed away from a respiratory illness that would have been very easy to fix here in America. But in Haiti, with political unrest, they could not get the child the medical care she needed. She suffocated and died on the way to the hospital. We didn't want to adopt from Haiti. We knew that was not the calling in our lives, but we felt the call to do something. So we began thinking adoption for our own family. I myself was adopted, and that got a lot of things rolling. We asked ourselves, Shannon and I, do we want to go and adopt foster care? Do we want to adopt an infant here in America? What do we want to do? And we just felt a call to adopt internationally because of the orphan. And we sat down and we had the same conversations everybody else has with international adoption, and one part of that was, can we afford it? The answer is always no. You can't afford that. But let me ask you a question. When God calls us to do something great on faith, can you afford any of it? Because isn't that the part where faith comes in? Where God says, hey, I'm not going to tell you exactly how this is going to go right now. I just want you to trust me. So we trusted God, and we began our adoption. And we met Raya, and we met her little brother, Roman. Let me tell you something about Roman. Roman's a sweet little boy. He's 3.5 years old. They had Roman living with the infants in the orphanage because he was deaf. Because one time he didn't respond to a clap test behind his ears, so they assumed him deaf. They assumed him, quote unquote, dumb. They left him away. We meet him. We bring him home. He is a beautiful boy. I go to a meeting at church, and what happens? I get a call from my wife that this beautiful boy is biting her in the knee. And then I get a FaceTime from my wife that this beautiful boy is throwing books at her face. And then I see FaceTime and videos of him spitting on her and punching her and kicking her. This sweet story of adoption you all want to hear, right? Here's what happens. When you live in an orphanage, your brain chemistry is altered. Why? Because when you fall down and you hurt your knee and you need comforted, and the comfort of a parent sends certain electrodes through your brain into your body and tells you it's okay, you're safe. These children in an institutional setting, they don't have that. It affects their brain chemistry. Their brain is literally altered. So what are we going to do about it? Roman today, he's a beautiful little boy. He loves his daddy. He loves his mommy. They've made up. You would never know. You would look at this child and you would never know. We got him a cochlear implant. He hears fine. He's a beautiful little boy. Raya is a beautiful little girl. We've adopted 3 other children. They're wonderful. They're here tonight. They're beautiful children. You would never know the challenges. Why? Because family can heal the hurting heart. But of all things, we have a problem in this world. We have 153 million children who need hope. UNICEF has since made efforts to do this and to address the orphan crisis. They've taken billions and they've dedicated it to this, and they've founded organizations and they send groups out to Uganda, to the Democratic Republic of Congo. They send people to China and to parts of Russia, even though it's now closed, into Ethiopia, Haiti, Ukraine, Guyana, Latvia, wherever countries you have international adoption. And what we've found is that it's just not making a dent. United Nations has tried and they're not making a dent. But you know who is? The church. Because you have approximately 2 billion people scattered across the globe in all nations who have the ability right now to say, I can help someone by just opening up my home. I can open up my home to an orphan child. I can open up my home to host them over Christmas or to host them over a summer. I can open up my home and pursue adoption. I can open up my checkbook and I can help another family who's doing this. I can launch an event to help a family raise money. I can help them somehow. And it does come down to that old adage. You're not called to do it all, but we are called to do something. And I can testify that in my home, there are 5 children. We have 9, by the way, total. But there are 5 of our 9 children who are adopted, but who are my own, who share my name, and they've blessed my life. And I question what would happen if even a fraction of today's 2 billion Christians would just do something. Within one generation, there would not be a single orphan.